Hi, this is Coach Carl, and just a question. When should I restring my tennis racket? Well, first of all, when it looks bad. Okay, that's pretty obvious. When it starts looking a bit furry and it's looking a bit scraggly, that's definitely a reason to restring a racket.
You see it carefully. It's getting a bit frayed. Now's a good time to restring your racket. Another thing too, does this racket need restringing? Yes, you see it gets all furry, so some strings have a lot of fibers. And me personally, I think this is playing perfectly just before it breaks. Okay? So normally I'm the one that plays until it breaks. That's just how I play. Now this racket over here, it looks perfectly okay, but if I snap, let me see, if you look carefully, let's see if you can see, you'll see some nodules. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if I can do some more. See how there's a groove? There should be a groove just underneath. I don't know if you can see it. I think so. I'll try and highlight it. Let's do it again. You see how it clicks? There we go. So you'll see little grooves on the strings. So that means it's definitely going to be going soon.
Because the strings do age and you do lose your tension straight after you restring it, it slowly loses tension. So as you know, if it starts looking bad, that's a good reason. Two, if it feels bad, so you feel like it's playing a little differently than what you're used to, then makes sense. Please get it restrung, especially if you're a field player that you feel like it's a little off, balls are going a little deader, it's coming off the strings a little bit funny, and it's not just you, it definitely feels different. So that's a good one. Another time, a lot of people say, how many times should you restring your racket? Well, as many times as you play per week. Okay, that's the old one. But frankly, I'm more doubling that because a lot of players are singles players. And being a singles player, you hit a lot of balls. Okay, so there's definitely those type of players that definitely need to restring the racket. So definitely, if you're a singles player, I'd go, if I play once a week, I'd definitely restring it twice a year. Remember, putting out the amount of money is almost negligible to the fact the matter that you're spending time on money on balls, you're spending time, money on court time in the indoor season. So one would think the strings make a huge difference. Though the thing that actually hits the ball, it's very important to actually have something that's consistent and you know where it's going. Then there's the Mr. Cheapo rule. Restring a racket when the strings break. Okay, that's basically it. And especially somebody who's like a recreational player, it's the most cost-effective way. The problem is there's an inconvenience. Okay, you are going to be stuck in the middle of a match somewhere where you have to borrow a racket, which is not the one you've been playing with, and then you have to wait until it gets restrung. But if you play once a week, you got a week to wait for it to come back. So the player rule. Okay, so good players, basically they really want to play well and they really want to make sure that they're hitting ball in the center strings, and they always want to have a consistent thing. So as I said before, the player rule is if I'm playing 3 times a week, I'd have it done 6 times. I'd often have 2 rackets, and I'd always make sure that I get the same restringer to restring the racket, because his machine could be calibrated differently to other people's machine. So I always want to have a consistent service every time I get my rackets restrung. Another one to do it is you can buy your own strings online and then just ask the person to restring it at a specific tension. You just pay for labor, but you actually get what you want, because sometimes the people don't carry that many strings. Rough rule of thumb, make sure that your stringer has more than 3 to 5 different types of string when they're stringing. If he just has one type of string, then maybe he's just an amateur restringer. If you're just a recreational player, it's fine. But if you're somebody who really needs a specific thing, a specific tension, then definitely look for somebody who's got a wider range. Another time to change your strings is when you are injured. Let's say you're playing and the shock, you either got a shock in your wrist or you got tennis elbow or golfer's elbow. something's not right. Make sure your string tension, you drop it about 5 pounds. Um, Remember, the cost is negligible in comparison to pain. You know, I'd spend a lot of money to avoid pain, so spend the money, just drop the tension down. Some people crank up their tension too high, way above 60 sometimes on a racket hit string tension, and in a racket that's a player's racket that's so heavy, it just feels like a plank, especially with some of these tougher strings that are really like, it's like a piece of wire and there's no feel in it, but they're never going to break. It hurts your arms so badly. So just be very careful. Don't string your strings too tightly. Make sure it's always in recommended tension. And very often when I first get a racket, I'll always put it in the middle of recommended tension. And if I want more power, I drop the tension a bit. If I want more control, I'll increase it a bit in 2 pound increments, 4 pound increments. But definitely, if I'm injured, I'm going to drop the tension way down just to look after my arm. Two, sometimes you have to get your racket restrung somewhere and it comes back and it's way tighter than what it was, what you wanted. Okay, do not stay with it. It is worth the money. First, ask them if they can do a better job, and actually ask them if they can, just take it back and loosen it up a bit. But other thing, just restring it and get the right tension. It's worth it. At the end of the day, you're going to get hurt playing with a racket that's a lot tighter than it needs to be. When should I not restring my tennis racket? Well, basically, when you're the type of player that plays once a year, twice a year, then it doesn't really matter. And just have fun. Get playing first and see if you really like the game and really start playing more, then restring your racket. Okay, I think you don't have to restring your racket if you're just starting out once, twice a week. I mean, once, twice a year. But anything more than that, when you start playing on a weekly basis, then start thinking about restringing on a regular basis. If your racket is older than 10 years and they came with the original strings, you definitely need to restring. The resilience in the strings are just, there's nothing in the racket. You're just going to end up hurting yourself. So go and get the racket restrung, and that's a very good way to start. And while you're at it, get a new overgrip, because that will actually help with the feel of the racket too, and it'll feel like a new racket.